Good evening to one and all. Welcome you all to the Daily Indian Express newspaper analysis for the date 10th November 2023, brought to you by Ganesh AS Academy. Okay, let's get into the today's newspaper analysis. So mentioned here are the list of articles which we are going to have the analysis in the upcoming slides. So have a look at it. Okay, let's get into the analysis of each and every article one by one. Now report to go to speaker, he will take a call on the tabling in Lok Sabha. So the news is related to the recent controversy of the cash for question which has been raised against the TMC MP, and the ethics committee has been appointed by the speaker, and the committee after its investigation has came up with a report to expel the MP from the parliament. So this is what the report is about, and this report has been given to speaker. It is up to the speaker to table it on the Lok Sabha. So the news is related to civil service examination under a topic called Indian polity and governance, constitution, etc. And similarly, and for mains under GS paper 2 under a subtopic called parliament and state legislature. So as I said, the ethics panel has adopted a report of expulsion of the particular MP. So what are the rules that has been governing the ethics committee's report on the Lok Sabha is, so the governing procedure for the ethics committee is chapter 20A of the rules of procedure, and then conduct of business in the Lok Sabha, which has been formed in August 2015, and the committee's recommendation will be submitted to the speaker, and it is up to the speaker who may direct the report for the further action in the Lok Sabha. And the report also may contain procedures for the Lok Sabha to take up this report for their debates, discussion, and as well as the votings. And according to the rule 316E, the chairperson or any other member of the committee need to first pass a motion with the approval of the speaker for taking up of the report that has been adopted by the committee in the Lok Sabha, and the speaker may put the question in the house, and the report may contain a provision of half an hour for the debate before taking up the motion by the chairperson or the member of the committee for taking up of the report. Once the motion has been passed, then it has been said is that the Lok Sabha is ready to take up the committee's report, and the further negotiation debates will be taking place, and then it will be put under the vote by the Lok Sabha. So if the voting is for the report means, then that particular MP will get expelled from the Lok Sabha. So this is what the power of the report of the ethics committee is. And according to rule 316F, what it is saying is that if the motion that the report of the committee has been taken into consideration means, then it shall be put down in the list of business after the disposal of the questions. So this is what the process of the tabling of the ethics committee report on the Lok Sabha is. So first of all, we have to know what is this ethics committee is. See, each house, that is lower house as well as the upper house, will have their own ethics committee to inquire into the unethical behavior of the member of the parliament. And the Lok Sabha's ethics committee comprise of 10 members, and the Rajya Sabha ethics committee comprise of 15 members. And then the members are appointed by the speaker for the tenure of 1 year. For the case of Rajya Sabha, by the chairman for the tenure of 1 year. And the function of the ethics committee, as I said, to oversee the moral as well as the ethical conduct of the member of the parliament, and to prepare the code of procedure for the members in the houses, and it is bound to amendment from time to time according to the requirement of the house. And what is the difference between the privilege committee as well as the ethics committee is because their functional jurisdiction most of the time overlap with each other. But in the case of privilege committee, they will be taking up the matters which is of serious concern. But in the case of ethics committee, they will only be their inquiry or the taking up of the matters will only be related to the unethical conduct of the members of Lok Sabha. So this is what the thing about the detail about the ethics committee is, and this is what the overall analysis to the news is. What we need to study further is we should know about what is privilege committee. Apart from the difference which we have mentioned here, we should know about what is the structure of the privilege committee and who is the chairperson of it, whether it is the speaker or whether it is the member of the parliament, and what is the tenure of the members of the members, those who are present in the committee. Secondly, we should be aware of Article 105, that is parliamentary privileges. What are all the privileges that is available to the MPs or the citizens? And then with citizens with respect to the parliament. And thirdly, we should be aware of the overall function of the parliament, right from their election of the members to the other aspect of the functioning of the parliament. So these are all the things which we need to be aware of. And with this, we have reached the end of this topic. Shadows of risk. So the news is related to a report that has been brought out by a body of RBI related to the NBFC's health, that is non-banking financial companies' health in the economy. And under prelims it is related to economic and social development. Similarly under mains GS paper 3, economic and development, under a topic called economic and development is linked with a subtopic called Indian economy and issues relating to planning of mobilization of resource growth, development and employment. So this is what the news is. This is how it is linked to exam. So the Center for Advanced for Financial Report and Learning, an independent body which functions under RBI, which is very important from the perspective of prelims, has recently released a report related to non-banking financial company, as I said at the beginning of this news. What it has said is that right now all the parameters of the non-banking financial companies are very healthy, are in a stable mode, and right now there is no kind of risk that has been facing the NBFCs. Like in the case of the capital position, asset quality and the profitability of the NBFCs are right now stable, and this stability has reached after certain reforms, regulation that has been made by the government after the post 2018 liquidity crisis in the NBFCs, and also the COVID related impact on the NBFCs. So this is what the thing is about. And the risk weighted asset of the NBFC is 27.6%, which is way higher than the required 15%, that is the statutorily required 15%. But it has pointed out certain risks. What it is that for the past few years, that is post pandemic, financing of banking, the normal the regular banking sectors to the NBFCs has got increased, and this may lead to a systemic risk in the upcoming future because of enormous lending by the bank to the NBFCs. If there is any kind of fail down of this NBFC is going to happen, means that sure it may have a ripple effect or the spillover effect on the banking industry itself, which in turn will be having the effect on the overall economy as well. So that is what the report has been pointing out while mentioning the word called systemic risk. And why the government as well as RBI need to take this thing as seriously is that because of two reasons. Because two periods of stark contrast in monetary policy, that is during pandemic, that is 2020 to 2021, because of the pandemic and its related negative impact on the businesses, RBI has followed a liberalized monetary policy so that the interest rate got reduced. This led to loosening of the liquidity policy so that the cash flow in the economy got increased, so that the business also got revamped. But after 2021, the stark increase in the inflation, the RBI again started to raise the interest rate. Right now the interest rate got increased and it is reached a level up to 6.5%. So two contradictory monetary policy have been seen by our Indian economy in the past 3 years. Such kind of contradictory monetary policy led to a volatile like situation in the business environment. So such, and this one thing, and the other second thing is that during the post 2008 crisis, economic crisis has led to failure of the most of the banking industries, like in the case of rising NPA. And during that time, the financing to the MSME sectors has been taken up by the NBFC companies. Because of the financing of the MSMEs by NBFC companies, that is during the post 2008 crisis, these NBFC companies acted as shock observers, where mainstream banking industries failed to arrest the post 2008 financial crisis. So such kind of importance the NBFCs is having. So because of these two things, the RBI as well as the government need to take this risk as seriously, and they need to do a mitigation effect so that the NBFCs will be safeguarded, so that it may not face any kind of risk, so that which in turn will be very helpful for the growth of the MSME sectors only, and also at the same time the overall business growth only. So this is what the report is about. So what is the term shadow banking is? The shadow banking is a bank like activity, but it like in the case of lending, whose activities will be outside the framework of the banking sectors. Like in the case of non-banking financial companies are also called as shadow banking, and they are not regulated in the same way as the normal banking industry has been regulated, and they act as intermediaries between the investors as well as the borrowers. So this is what the term the shadow banking is about. Okay, let's have a look into the non-banking financial companies. See, the non-banking financial companies are companies which is registered under Companies Act 2013 or the previous Companies Acts, and it is being governed by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and also by RBI. And what is the main difference between the banks as well as the NBFCs? That the NBFC can't accept the demand deposit, but they could able to receive the other kind of deposits in the form of arrangement or any other schemes that has been implemented at one go, but they could not able to accept the demand deposit like types. So what is the types of NBFCs? One is the NBFCs that is not registered under RBI. As I said, like in the case of those are NBFCs that has been registered under Companies Act, etc. And on the basis of deposit, NBFCs are further divided into deposit taking NBFCs, non-deposit taking NBFCs. And also on the nature of third, that it has been the third type of NBFC is based on the nature of the activity, the area of its spending or the area of its investment. Such is the based on the type of activity the NBFCs has been classified. So what we need to study further is we should know about what is small finance bank, what is payment bank, and what is the normal banking regulation that is prevailing or present in the Indian economy. So these are all the other areas which we need to be aware of. So with this, we have reached the end of this topic. For developing nations, energy transition has a heavy cost. Chief Economic Advisor. So the thing is related to the energy transition to mitigate the climate change negative impact. So how the news is related to examination is under prelims it is related to economic and social development. Similarly under mains it is related to GS paper 3 economic development. Under a subtopic called Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resource, growth, development and employment. So let's have a look into the news. So developing countries need to face a twin challenge of poverty alleviation, economic growth, and also to smoothly transfer the energy from fossil fuel based to the non-fossil fuel based economy. So these two things is posing the dual challenge to the developing economy in the form of economic burden. So the cost of capital after the post pandemic has gone to nearly has risen up to 400 to 500 basis point, and that is in the past 2 years. So three types of cost need to be bared by developing countries for their energy transition. One is financial cost, that is the rising interest rate has an impact on the financing of the energy transition. Secondly, the fuel cost, because of the pandemic and then the Russian-Ukraine war and also the war that is happening in the West Asia has triggered the supply chain constraints, which in turn is leading to rise of the fuel price globally. So it is having the impact on Indian economy itself. Thirdly, the high cost of the new energy resources. So these are all the three types of causes that need to be borne by the developing countries for their transition to non-fossil fuel economy. And apart from this three cost of energy transition, if India needed to achieve, India means the developing countries needed to achieve the net zero, which they have committed at the United Nations Framework for Convention on Climate Change, only 2 out of the 3 economic indicators could be achieved if the developing countries wanted to achieve net zero. For example, if the developing countries wanted to maintain fiscal sustainability as well as fiscal stability, they could not able to make up the or do good in the economic competitiveness. Like in the case of if they wanted to achieve the net zero means, and also at the same time they wanted to maintain economic competitiveness means, the fiscal incentives need to be given, but this fiscal incentives will increase the fiscal unsustainability. So this is what the thing is about. Out of the 3 indicators, only 2 could be able to achieve if our aim is to achieve the net zero. So this is what the thing that has been quoted by our chief economic advisor. Okay, let's have a look into what are all the steps being taken by India for energy transition. The formation of International Solar Alliances 2015 under the initiative of India and France, which is the global platform where the developing countries as well as the global south countries could able to form a big coalition for the technology transfer, fund transfer, or the any other technical related thing transfer, as well as the human related expertise related transfer things. Such kind of sharing of this kind of resources will be taking place under International Solar Alliance, whose main aim is to transition the global economy from the fossil fuel to the non-fossil fuel based global economy. Secondly, the policy measures like in the case of Energy Conservation Act, green hydrogen mission, as well as the national biofuel policies, etc. Then the FAME scheme 2, which is being implemented by Ministry of Heavy Industry, to increase the production as well as adaptation of the electric vehicles, as well as the renewable purchase obligation, that is the electricity distribution companies need to procure a certain percentage of electricity from the renewable sources. Such kind of obligation has been made under the renewable purchase obligation of the government. And then cooking fuel has been the most the schemes the schemes has been introduced to promote the clean cooking fuel, so that the traditional biomass based cooking fuel has been transitioned to the clean cooking fuel in recent times, which in turn has led to reduction in the carbon footprint, as well as it is acting as one of the major contributor for the climate change mitigation activity. So these are all the steps being taken by government of India. So what is the challenges that is present in implementing this transition is, first and foremost, is access to the minerals. If the electric vehicles or the anything that is related to renewable technology need to be made in India, means such kind of technology will be made because of the availability of minerals. Some minerals is available in India, but most of the minerals need to be sourced from other countries, which is posing a challenge. Secondly, transfer, technology transfer. Right now, most of the developing countries does not have the sophisticated technology to excavate, as well as the construct, as well as produce uh, the renewable technologies from these minerals. So they need to be transferred. This kind of technologies need to be transferred from the developed countries, which the developed countries are right now hesitating to transfer. And then fund from developed countries. See, the developed countries has promised to provide $100 billion from 2023. Initially, it was fixed at 2020, and then later period it got extended since 2023, and till now developed countries has not provided any penny of it. So this kind of fund is very important for the developing countries to transition their economy from fossil to non-fossil fuel economy. And then the lack of awareness in terms of lifestyle by the consumers and also by the policy makers is also acting as hindrance for the transitioning our economy from fossil to non-fossil fuel economy. So these are all the challenges right now been facing the transition. So what need to be studied further is, we should know about Panchamrit promise that has been made by India at the United Nations Framework for Convention on Climate Change. So what kind of promise has been made? What are the goals that has been included in this promise? We should be aware of it. Secondly, we should be aware of the entire historical aspect of United Nations Framework for Convention on Climate Change. Thirdly, we should also be aware of the recently concluded G20 climate action. So these are all the other things which we need to be aware of. And with this, we have reached the end of this topic. Indian remain vulnerable to recurring overlapping food price shocks. Shaktikant Das, that is our RBI governor. The news is related to a volatile inflationary situation that is prevailing in the economy because of the sudden shocks that is arising from the vegetable price rise or overall the food price rise. So the news is related to economic and social development for prelims. Similarly, under mains, GS paper 3 economic development under a subtopic called Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resource, growth, development and employment. So India remains vulnerable to the recurring as well as overlapping of food price shocks, as I said, and the recently concluded the monetary policy meeting. What it has projected is that our consumer price index for the 2022, 24, 23 and 24 is going to be 5.4%, which is lesser when compared to the 22-23 years 6.7%. And in that, the core inflationary pressure has moderated by 170 basis points since January, and because of this situation, because of this moderation effect made by the core inflation, the repo rate has been made at the constant level of 6.5% at the previous 4 monetary policy meetings. And this is one side. This is the rising of the the shocks of the food prices is having an influence on the inflationary policy making, and this is one side. And then the West Asians the recent development, that is the war that is happening in the West Asian countries, could able to increase the fuel prices, which in turn might have the inflationary effect in the Indian economy. So this kind of another thing is happening in relation to the inflation. So the policy making in this recent time, it is in relation to the economy is more challenging, and it is against, the policy making is facing a trade-off like growth versus inflation, price stability versus financial stability, and then current exigencies versus the future sustainability. Such kind of trade-off being faced by the policy makers in recent times in relation to the monetary policies or the overall fiscal policy. So what is this inflation is about? It is the rise in the price of goods and services. The rise in the price of goods and services is called as inflation, and at the same time it will have a decline in the purchasing power of the people. So on the one hand the price will rise, on the other hand there will be a decline in the purchasing power. Such kind of scenario is called as inflation. Inflation rate is nothing but the rate at which the price is rising. So how the inflation is being measured is, it is being measured by two types of index. One is wholesale price index, another is consumer price index. Wholesale price index, a basket of goods whose weightage will be given according to the transaction that is made at the wholesale level. In that, the manufactured goods are given higher weightages. Similarly, the consumer price index, and it has been released by wholesale price index has been released by Ministry of Commerce. And similarly, the consumer price index, whose basket of goods and whose basket of goods weightages is being given by the transaction that has been made at the consumer price level. So according to the transaction that has been made at the consumer price level, food and agriculture products has been given higher weightages in the among the basket of goods that is present under the consumer price index, and it is being released by National Statistical Office. And since 2015, because of the Urjit Patel Committee report, government is using consumer price index as the official index to measure the inflation in Indian economy. Previously it was the wholesale price index, but after the recommendation of Urjit Patel Committee 2015, it has been changed to consumer price index. So this is what the measurement of index inflation in Indian economics is about. What is headline as well as core inflation? What is the difference between them is, headline is the change in the value of all the goods and services in an economy. But in the case of core inflation is, it excludes the volatile items like food and fuels from the inflation calculation. Such kind of calculation of the basket of goods excluding fuel as well as food is called as core inflation. So this is what the thing is. So what need to be studied further is, we should know about RBI, its mandate and the function as well as the structure. Secondly, we should also be aware of the Monetary Policy Committee, whether it is statutory committee or executive committee, on what is the mandate of it. Thirdly, we should also be aware of the monetary policy tools that has been implemented to contain the inflation in the economy. So these are all the things which we need to be further aware of. And with this, we have reached the end of this topic. Exports to rise by 6.3% in October-December, that is third quarter of this fiscal year, according to the EXIM Bank. So the news is related to export. So under prelims it is related to economic and social development. Similarly under mains it is related to GS paper 3, Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resource, growth, development and employment. So what the EXIM Bank has said is that it has forecasted the 6.3% growth in export in India during the third quarter of this fiscal year, and then the non-fuel export is going to rise by 7.7% in the third quarter of this fiscal year. Previous 2 quarters in this fiscal year has faced the negative growth in terms of export, which will be reversed in the third quarter because of improvement in the GDP growth rate, and also the expected easing of the monetary policy tightening at the global level. So these are all the things which might fuel the export related growth in the next quarter. This is what the prediction that has been made by EXIM Bank. So what is the advantage the export has is that because of increased export in an economy, its currency will get stabilized rather than getting depreciated. Secondly, it will increase the production in an economy, which in turn will have impact of increased employment and then increased revenue to the government in the form of taxation. So these are all the advantages the economy has if it is going to export more amount of products to the global economy. And then what is this Export Import Bank? It is the premier export finance institutions which is wholly owned by Government of India and which is being formed under Export Import Bank of India Act 1981, and it provides financial assistance to both exporters as well as importers, and it is governed by board of directors which is headed by a chairman and who is appointed by the government. So this is what the news related and analysis of the news is, and what need to be studied further is we should know about gift city and then the PLI scheme and also the manufacturing policy of India. So these are all the other areas which we need to be aware of, and with this we have reached the end of this topic. Okay, let's get into today's practice prelims question. So mentioned here is the today's practice prelims question. I want those students, those who are watching this session online, please do comment the option point for the question which you are seeing right now on the board. Okay, with this we have reached the end of today's session. Please do like, comment, share as well as subscribe to Ganesh IAS YouTube channel to get further update related to current affairs or important sessions which will be brought to you in the future by Ganesh IAS Academy. Thank you.